address you as Rabbi? Rabbi
No, everybody calls me Gidon,
Gidon.
but
Okay.
some people call me Rabbi also. Anyway, yeah, so this is Rabbi Gidon Ariel, and we are on Root Source Conversations, and I'm very happy to introduce you to my friend, Dr. Philip Steele. I got doctor right, yeah?
Well, perhaps.
Mostly doctor. Okay. ABA or ABD or whatever it is. So yes, so in Root Source, of course, is a platform for pro-Israel Christians and Jews to engage with each other on topics that they have in common. And as I'm the executive director and co-founder of Root Source, Gidon Ariel, and I'm an Orthodox Israeli Jew. Often also go by the self-identity of a religious Zionist or an Orthodox Jewish religious Zionist. And so Zionism is a very, as I've discussed many times, is a very large part of my identity and therefore the identity of Root Source. So at some point, I came across Philip over here, and we spoke and we got to know each other. And I also read some of his stuff, and I thought it's very fascinating what he's doing and who he is. And so I thought I would introduce him to our viewers. That's you. And here we are. We're doing it. So shalom to you, Philip. How are you?
Shalom, Gidon. I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay, so Philip lives in Poland, right?
Right. I'm an American and Idahoan, but I've been here in Poland 30 some years already. I came here when I was 27, straight from Idaho.
Wow. Well, okay, yeah. So from time to time, you'll say things, and I said, "Oh yeah, I knew that," but I've totally forgotten it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Idaho. I probably said the first time I met you, I don't think I know anybody else from Idaho.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Well, I finished high school in Haley, Idaho, which is a little town next to the ski resort of Sun Valley. That name usually echoes a little better. And I from there I went to college in Boise, the capital of Idaho. Went up to Moscow, Idaho, Moscow, in fact, for another couple of years before coming out to Poland. I was inspired to come to Poland. I don't have any Polish blood, although I now have Polish children, but I don't come from a Polish family. I was inspired to come to Poland through my work with a refugee resettlement agency in Boise, Idaho, during my first few years at college there. There were only 14 such refugee resettlement agencies in the whole of America, the United States, in the
What kind of refugees?
well, primarily Polish. That was the thing. They made such a big impression on me. I later wanted to come here. The program itself, though, began with family reunification for the Vietnamese in the context of that whole war and everything.
You're
Began
talking about the 70s or 80s?
talking about the 70s. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I began working with the program in 1983. And by that point, which was just shortly after martial law had been lifted here in Poland, the most of our refugees were in fact from Central Europe, from the Soviet bloc. So
Just one
Czechs.
second. Did you say that martial law lifted in the 80s?
Yeah, martial law in Poland was imposed in 1981. That was the crackdown on solidarity, Lech Wałęsa and all of
Wait a
that.
second. Wait a second. Wait a second. I was confused. When you said martial law, I was thinking of the Marshall Plan.
No, no,
And
no,
that's something like martial law, Martial. So in other
exactly.
words, after some kind of a war that affected Poland, so they said we're gonna curtail democracy somewhat, and we'll hopefully get things under control, and then we'll go back to the democracy. Did I guess right?
Well, back to communism. Yeah, the
Back to
communists.
communism.
Yeah, in 1981, the communists carried out a coup of sorts, and they took over the entirety of the state, crushed the opposition, the Solidarity opposition, led by the shipyard worker Lech Wałęsa up
Lech
in.
Walesa.
Right, right, right. So that was lifted in 83. And so suddenly Poles were able to escape. That was still the case then. People were escaping from, behind the Iron Curtain after all. So yeah, there were just the 14 such receiving points in the U.S. at the time, one of which, strangely enough, was in Boise, Idaho.
Wow.
So yeah, when I finished up college, I was still really enthralled with Poland and Poles, as I am to this day, I stress. And so yeah, I came out here in
At the
19.
very least, one of them.
Excuse
You're enthralled at least with the one you married.
me?
Wait a second. So what do you did you say in college you were volunteering at this refugee place in Idaho?
Yeah, yeah. Initially, I was a volunteer, but they put me on staff pretty quick. So in fact, I was
What did you do?
well. We did everything. I mean, we had to find apartment flats for them. We had to carry furniture up the stairs and have everything ready for them once they arrived. We also provided English training. We helped them do the nostrification, that is the translation of their diplomas into the American system. So if they were
Wow.
chemists or
Yes.
philologists or whatever it may have been, we helped them enroll their kids in school, showed them around the town, where's the shopping sites, everything to
And
help them.
how many refugees were there in this place? What did you call it? A refugee? What, a
Yeah, it
camp?
was called the Idaho International Institute, and we contracted with the State Department. And in my time, I was there from 83 to 86, and we received several thousand Eastern, as we said back then, not Central, but Eastern European refugees, most of whom were Polish.
And you said there was about 17 places like this all over the United States.
There were 14. Yeah, yeah. There were,
14. So
uh,
let's do some quick math. And you said there were about 3,000 in Idaho.
in my years, yeah, we received in those 3 years several thousand.
All
Yeah.
right. So, okay, we'll just pretend it's 3,000. And so I can only guess that that's an average. Obviously, I'm not looking it up. So that's about 50,000 such assisted refugees in the United States.
I don't think it works that way. No, I mean, the refugees um, were kept at a center, a refugee center, right outside of Vienna. It's called Dreiskirchen. And from there, it was run, I believe, by the United Nations, if or some large, if not United Nations, then European American agency. And from there, the refugees were free to choose where they wanted to go. And the United States was not the single country on the list. Many such Poles chose Sweden or Australia, for that matter. But about the 14 sites in the U.S., they were able to choose. And mind you, a couple of those sites were in New York City and Chicago, so more attractive, obviously, than Boise, Idaho. But there we were.
They didn't know any better. I mean, I wouldn't have known why Boise. Can't even pronounce it. What it's just amazing how somebody would actually choose Boise. What did they have people from Boise, Idaho going around giving out chocolate or something like that and say, come
Well,
to us?
there was this magical woman in Boise, Idaho. Her name was Helen Huff. I remained in touch with her to the end of her life. She passed away just a couple of years ago, but she was just the most phenomenal, most dynamic, wonderful woman who had the hugest heart. She was forever reaching out to help people. She was involved in changing state law. She became
Wow.
involved in refugee resettlement right after the end of the Vietnam War.
Ah, so
Initially,
she started out with the Vietnamese.
yeah, she was helping the Hmong people, right? They were our allies in Vietnam, but then were in
Yeah,
trouble
yeah,
with
yeah.
the
I don't
communist.
have to go there.
And then there was the Vietnamese family reunification program, and she was running that on behalf of the governor. And then when things heated up in this part of the world with martial law again in Poland, well then she shifted to helping Soviet bloc refugees resettle in Boise.
Wow. A true saint.
Helen Huff.
Wow. Very, very nice. No, but anyway, my eyes lit up when you told me what you were doing because that's exactly what we did here in Israel when the Ethiopian
Ah,
Jews came. We didn't.
right,
We don't really call them refugees. I can't even think offhand how you say refugee in Hebrew. Obviously, there's a word for it. But
right to return, I think.
yeah, for us it was just Jews making Aliyah, and we're very focused on Israel here in Israel, and to think, wow, they're doing that in the United States. I of course knew that they did that in the United States at the turn of the century in the early 1900s. Many Jews, millions of Jews came to the United States. I don't know if there was a refugee center in New York. They just kicked them
There
out of
was.
Ellis Island, huh?
Yeah, there was. In fact, there were all sorts of Hebrew Union sorts of organizations
Yeah,
that,
but they weren't state and federal. They were highest. They were Hebrew, like you said. It's
uh,
all very interesting. That's an interesting thing. Okay, so you were turned on by this kind of connection with the Poles who were coming to Idaho,
right?
and some of them were like chemists and professionals, so they made a new life in Idaho.
Almost all of them. Yeah, I mean, Poland was suffering from brain drain, as was this whole part of the world, right? I'm speaking from Warsaw. So yeah,
I understand. Brain drain meaning that smart people got trained and educated to be doctors and all sorts of smart things, but they were in this a communist place where they could barely get a loaf of bread, and they said, "The heck with this! We want to go to a place of freedom." So they whooshed out of there as soon as they could. They drained out of there.
well, and they had real opportunities to do so that working class people did not. You know, they were getting invited to conferences, you know, within their fields in Western Europe and so forth. So it was easier for the intelligentsia, as we otherwise call them, to make their way to Dreiskirchen outside of Vienna, I mentioned, and start a new life elsewhere.
So you were pursuing your undergraduate degree in Idaho, and you found out about this refugee center with Poland. What were you studying in your undergraduate degree?
I was studying history and ancient language. Yeah, I studied Greek and in Latin and early church history. I mentioned Helen Huff, this magical woman in Boise, Idaho. Boise has a lot of wonderful magic people. And another one is Professor Charles O'Dall. Now, Professor Charles O'Dall is has long been the most prominent figure in all of historical research regarding the reign of Constantine the Great. You know, the one who made the Roman Empire Christian,
Sure.
the early fourth century.
So
Yeah,
he's
so
like the world expert in Constantine.
exactly. And how did he wind up in Boise? It's a longer than a
Yeah,
story. So, yeah, I mean, why is he not at Harvard or where else? He married a woman. I hope he will. He's still alive and doing well. We're still in touch. I don't think he'll be offended for me to say this, but he uh, he married a woman from Boise, and when their daughter was about 7 or 8 years old, there was a divorce, and mom went back with the daughter, went back home to Boise, and Professor O'Dall wanted to stay close to his daughter, so he got a job at Boise State University, of all places. So anyway, I was studying
so he
Latin.
was a great teacher. You were very excited to
Yeah,
learn with him.
yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
Okay. And then so you were enjoying your study with Professor O'Dell, and you were enjoying your volunteering, and then afterwards working at the refugee center servicing lovely people from Poland. And then,
That's right. Well, when I finished college up in Moscow, Idaho, I came out here to Poland, and I got enrolled at the Polonicum. That's a center at the Polish Studies Department at the University of Warsaw for foreigners. They teach language and culture and so forth. So I was there for another 5 years. I was what 30, almost 32 when I finally finished up there. About Professor O'Dall, this actually links because my first claim to fame here in Poland was working as a medieval historian, and I wound up applying Professor O'Dall's interpretation of Constantine's conversion to Christianity to the conversion of Poland's first historical ruler to Christianity. You know, the Poles were pagans, as we say, until the middle
when?
of well, until the year 966 of the Common Era, right? And that's when the first ruler who's a historical figure. His name was Mieszko. That was when he became a Christian, was baptized, and so forth. And here we are to this day in Catholic Poland, right? But I wound up applying Professor O'Dahl's approach to Mieszko, which was entirely novel in Polish historiography. And you know, I published books. They made a movie. The National Center for Culture made a documentary film about my work for an important anniversary. It was in 2016 was the 1050th anniversary of Mieszko's conversion to Christianity. So anyway, yeah,
I'm just guessing now that you're mentioning it. I'm guessing, you know, we've all heard of, those of us who have heard of Constantine. Much fewer people have heard of Mieszko, but I'm wondering how many other places like that a leader converted to Christianity and turned their kingdom into a Christian one. Interesting.
yeah, well, it happened in every direction from beginning with the Roman Empire. You know, it went
Right.
north all the way to Scandinavia. It also went eastward. I mean, much of what's today Iraq and Iran was Christian in those early centuries because local, the Georgians, the Armenians, they converted as well, and right.
Wow, and they all had their conversion due to a leader, and it wasn't all Constantine converting and then automatically the whole world is Christian. It didn't work that way.
Wasn't quite that fast, no.
Okay, well, okay, I'm learning something over here. Very interesting. So that was what you were initially working on,
Yeah,
history of
yeah. I was
Poland.
doing medieval research into medieval Poland for years, but then I gave it up in about I guess it was 2011 or 2012, and that's when I jumped into early Zionism. And the reason had to do with it was 2012. Now I remember better. It had to do with the election, the presidential elections, and how badly Polish experts on America.
Just one second. The 2012 United States election.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The Polish leading Polish journalists who are otherwise experts in America were misrepresenting the candidacy of Mitt Romney and misconstruing the nature of his visit to Netanyahu. Those two men had studied actually together in Massachusetts when they were young men.
MIT.
Yeah, at MIT, right. And Romney went out to Israel, must have been the summer of 2012. And the Polish press was explaining, oh, yeah, well, he's out there because, he wants to get the Jewish vote. And, that was just so stupid. The point is that, of course, as you and I both know, Romney is a Republican, and the core of the Republican electorate are those evangelical Christians. And Romney, as a Mormon, had a special need to appeal to those evangelical Christians. So going out to Israel and showing that he's buddy from MIT days with Netanyahu, was really important. So anyway, I noticed this forever, that the Poles were forever explaining the U.S.-Israeli relationship in terms of manipulation via AIPAC, right? And I wanted to say something, it's the evangelicals, that's the linchpin, right? And it goes way back to colonial times. I wanted to say something forever, but was doing other things until, like I say, until 2012. Then I began writing on the role of evangelicalism in the U.S. vis-a-vis or regarding the special relationship with Israel.
Wow. Okay. So you saw that nobody in Poland understood what's going on in the American elections, and you said, so that's why I want to change what I'm doing for the past decades.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Wow.
It's been great. It's been a great adventure. It's 12 years now, and it just keeps expanding. I mean, initially, to repeat myself, I was looking only at Christian Zionism in the U.S., but I quickly began to study what was going on in Britain, what was going on in Calvinist Switzerland, for that matter. Henri Dunant, whom we otherwise know as the founder of the Red Cross, was an ardent, avid Christian Zionist beginning back in the 1860s. Right after he'd founded the Red Cross, he began creating little organizations to promote the Jewish resettlement of Palestine, of all things. So, I began researching into that, and pretty quick, I shifted from my focus on Christian Zionism to to Jews, after all, and Jewish Zionists. And just this last year, as you know, I published an important book on Theodor Herzl, right, the father of political Zionism, and had been writing a lot about other Jewish Zionists, Pinsker and Rabbi Kalischer and Rabbi Mochi Leber, who must be dear to you as a religious Zionist, right? These are
Both of
founders,
them.
founders of the Mizrahi movement, after all. So.
Now, but you in 2012 knew more than the average TV viewer, but not much more. I mean, that was not your focus. You knew that, no, it's obvious that it's evangelicals is the core of the Republicans. That's what the interest is. And then you just started from the ABCs to learn about Zionism.
Yeah, I'm self-taught. I've been learning, obviously, from the very best experts, reading all of their works and so forth these past 12 years. But yeah, that was never part of my formal education. No.
Now, are you also teaching in university?
No, I left the university after about a dozen years. I was there full-time teaching at the University of Warsaw, American Cultural Studies. And in that context, I did with my students raise the matter of evangelicalism, and that this is the key to understanding the relationship with Israel. But I hadn't been publishing on that topic, and and so I guest lecture. I'm off to the Jewish University in Berlin in about 3 weeks. Touro University, right?
Touro University in Berlin.
Yeah, they have a whole bunch of affiliates all over the world. I think there's a dozen or so outside of New York City, right? That's where.
Oh, in other words, it is the New York Touro College.
Yeah.
Wow,
Touro
I
College
know
has
that they got something here in Israel. I didn't realize that they have something all over. So interesting.
Yeah, it's right there in Berlin. So I'm going to go there, and I'll be making a lecture on my research into Herzl.
So in other words, so you're not employed by the university. You're self-employed, and you just hope that your books will sell.
I work for the Polish Academy of Sciences now. Yeah, and I'm in charge of a series on early Zionism. The work that we'll be publishing in just a couple of months now, the second in a series of 5 so far, is you'll have to help me. I only pretend to know Hebrew, after all, but it's Derishat Zion. It's the fundamental classic work from Rabbi Kalischer, 18.
Yes, Rishat Zion, that's right.
And it's never been published in Polish before. All these years, 162, 3 years now. Anyway, we found a small team of the finest Polish Hebraists, and they translated it in full into Polish for us. And I'm finishing right now the introduction to the matter, and that's coming out right away.
Does it exist in English?
The last I knew was that only fragments of it have been published in English. That it's a huge oversight, and the text is strictly rabbinical, so there's a very small readership, of like English native speakers who don't know Hebrew sufficiently to read the original, right? I mean,
no, I don't think that that's the situation. I don't know. I'm only giving you my gut feeling, but there's a very large or rabbinic, as you said, Orthodox Jewish library translated into English. The whole Art Scroll is a famous publisher. There are other publishers also. And Art Scroll only really started publishing 30, 40 years ago. I mean, I remember probably about 50 years ago, they published their first book. It was a translation and a commentary on the Scroll of Esther, a small book. And since then, they're all over the place because people want to read in English. I live in Israel. I've been in Israel now for about 45 years. And English and Hebrew, I read Hebrew very well. Even still, I'll usually prefer English than Hebrew. It's my mother tongue. But all of my Orthodox friends, my family, they can barely pick up a Hebrew newspaper. So they're not gonna they're much rather read in English. And Drishat Sion, that book is not you're saying that it's not published in English. The thing is that it's political. It's political. We don't have a lot of time left, but I'll already just say that within Orthodox Judaism, there is the very strong Zionists like myself, and there are the spectrum of relationship towards Zionism. Obviously, going as far as vehemently anti-Zionist. They think that God doesn't want a Jewish state in Israel, and that kind of thing, but I don't really talk about that so much. But it's mostly people who say, listen, I like staying in America or wherever I am, and it's nice that there's Israel. I like visiting; it's lovely, but it's not the big miracle, and it's certainly not the big challenge that the Zionists think that it is. The ultra Zionists think that it is. So therefore, a book like Drishat Sion, which means yearning for Zion, I think that's yeah, is a classic amongst us ultra Zionist Orthodox. But nobody else has heard of it, and nobody would, and because it basically is if you read this book, you must move to Israel.
Yeah.
So who wants to read a book like that if they don't want to move to Israel?
I do need to double check. The last I knew was from about, say, 5 or 6 years ago. I was in contact with the leading scholar on Rabbi Kalisha. Her name is Jody Myers, and in fact, she just passed away like 2 years ago. She was only in her 60s, so it was much too soon.
Wow.
Wonderful woman. And but yeah, she stressed with me. I was brainstorming with her then the need to translate this into Polish, and she told me, well, it's not even in English. Herzberg and some of these volumes on
Right.
the Zionists thought that there were fragments, but that's it.
Wow. And so you've been working on Rabbi Kalisher's yearning for Zion, Drishat Sion. Have you heard of Yehuda Etzion?
Yehuda Etzion? No, I don't know. Who is that?
So Yehuda Etzion, he's quite a character. Coincidentally, I just saw him last night, but he published, and I think I would call it an updated, annotated version of Drishat Sion in Hebrew.
Yeah, this was like 3 or 4 years ago, right?
Right.
Yeah, we ordered that volume to help us because it's all annotated and everything.
Exactly.
All right. So this team of hotshot Hebraists I mentioned, yeah, they had that book and made use of it.
Right. Wow, it's such a small world.
Just so,
I was at an event, like I said, and my next meeting is coming in. I was just at an event that my neighbor, her grandmother passed away. And so they were doing an event in her honor. And so he was there because he also honored her grandma, that kind of thing. But I didn't get a chance to say hello to him. Whatever. He's a minuscule VIP or something like that here in Israel. Listen, this has been a very interesting introduction. We're only up to 12 years ago, so we got to do a little bit more introduction. So let's try to do this again. And we'll finally get all the introductions out of the way. Then we'll start thinking about interesting things also.
Wow. I look forward to that, Gidon. Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you, sir.